They call it the Social Security security check scam. But the truth is, it's not checking anything. It's draining bank accounts, destroying retirement plans, and leaving seniors with nothing but confusion and heartbreak. And it's happening right now to thousands of people who never saw it coming because the scammers have perfected their act to sound exactly like legitimate Social Security representatives, using real case numbers, actual office addresses, and even spoofed caller IDs, so the number on your phone screen looks like it's from the Social Security Administration itself, and once they have you on the line, they speak with authority and urgency, claiming there's been suspicious activity on your account. Maybe they say someone's trying to claim your benefits. Maybe they claim your Social Security number is linked to a crime in another state. Maybe they insist your payments have been frozen until they verify your identity. And of course, the only way to fix it is to confirm your banking information, date of birth, and even mother's maiden name. And here's where the trap tightens, because the moment you hand over those details, they're in. They can reroute your benefits to a different account, drain your savings, and even open new credit lines in your name. And what's worse is how convincing they are. They'll reference specific past payments, mention your local Social Security office by name, and even send follow-up emails that look like official government correspondence, complete with the SSA logo and watermarks. So by the time most victims realize something's wrong, the money is long gone and the trail is ice cold. But here's the chilling part. Many of these scammers are working from sophisticated call centers overseas, reading from scripts that have been tested and refined for years to overcome skepticism. And some even have second-tier agents who pretend to be supervisors to make the whole thing sound more real, and they've learned to prey on the exact fears seniors have about losing their benefits, using phrases like immediate suspension and legal action to create panic, because they know fear makes people act fast without thinking. Now, you might assume this only happens to people who aren't tech-savvy, but that's a dangerous misconception. Scammers have fooled retired teachers, former accountants, and even a 72-year-old lawyer who prided himself on spotting fraud. And in his case, it started with a voicemail saying his Social Security number had been flagged for suspicious bank transfers, and within 5 minutes of calling back, he was speaking to a federal investigator who had him believing his entire retirement was at risk. And the emotional manipulation was so strong that he wired $14,000 to a so-called secure government holding account before his daughter intervened. But why aren't authorities stopping this? The sad truth is, law enforcement is overwhelmed, international cooperation is slow, and for every scam call center they shut down, 2 more pop up somewhere else with a new name, new phone numbers, and new tactics, and they're getting more creative. Some now send text messages saying your benefits are on hold, and you must click a link to reactivate them. And that link leads to a fake login page that captures your username and password in seconds, or worse, installs malware on your phone that records everything you type. There's also the benefits upgrade version, where scammers claim the government is increasing payments for certain recipients, but needs your updated direct deposit info to process the change, and it sounds like free money. So many victims rush to comply. And here's the scariest twist. Some of these criminals are starting to target victims repeatedly, selling their information to other scam operations who hit them again weeks later, pretending to be investigators helping recover the stolen funds, but instead they steal even more. So how can seniors protect themselves? The first rule is to remember that the Social Security Administration will never call you out of the blue to demand personal information, threaten your benefits, or ask for payment of any kind. Any legitimate issues will be communicated by official mail, and they'll never ask for gift cards, wire transfers, or cryptocurrency. Yet scammers love those payment methods because they're impossible to trace. The second rule is to hang up immediately on suspicious calls, even if the number looks legitimate, and then call the SSA directly at their official number to verify. And the third rule is to freeze your credit with all 3 major credit bureaus so scammers can't open new accounts in your name if they get your Social Security number. But perhaps the most important defense is education, talking openly about these scams with friends, neighbors, and family members, because scammers rely on secrecy and shame to keep victims silent, and if everyone shared what happened to them, these operations would lose much of their power. And maybe the most tragic part is how many victims feel embarrassed, thinking they should have known better. But that's exactly what the scammers count on, because the truth is, these criminals are skilled psychological manipulators who can catch almost anyone off guard, and the only way to beat them is to recognize the signs before it's too late, because once the money is gone, recovery is slow, painful, and often incomplete, leaving seniors not just financially devastated, but emotionally scarred. And that's exactly why this scam is spreading faster than ever, quietly draining the life savings of people who spent decades working for their retirement only to have it vanish in a single phone call. What makes this new Social Security scam especially dangerous is how it doesn't feel like a scam at first, because the criminals are playing the long game, building trust over multiple interactions instead of going for the quick score, and that means they might call you once, introduce themselves politely, and say they're just confirming that you recently received an official letter about changes to your benefits, which of course you haven't, but instead of pressing for information, they say, "Oh, it must still be in the mail," and then they leave you alone for a week before calling back to follow up, and by then their voice feels familiar, safe, and credible, and that's when they slip in the request for personal information or banking details, and because they've spent time cultivating trust, victims feel far less suspicious. And here's the shocking part. Many of these scammers now keep detailed notes on every conversation, so if you tell them your spouse's name, scammers have bought legitimate SSL certificates, and that tiny illusion of security convinces victims to log in with their actual Social Security credentials, handing them over instantly. And once inside, scammers don't just steal the data, they sometimes change the login credentials so the victim is locked out completely, meaning they can't even see their own account to know the benefits have been redirected. And then there's the mailing angle. Yes, some scammers are sending physical letters now, using stolen SSA letterhead templates and convincing language about benefit adjustments, but with just enough of a twist to push the victim toward a phone number or website controlled by the scammers. And because it arrives in the mail, victims assume it's legitimate, not realizing that printing fake government letters is child's play for criminals with a decent printer and an internet connection. And the financial damage isn't limited to the benefits themselves. Once scammers have your Social Security number and personal details, they can pull off what's called account takeover fraud, which means they impersonate you to your bank, credit card companies, and even Medicare, redirecting not just Social Security benefits but also tax refunds, insurance payouts, and retirement distributions, essentially hijacking your financial life until you untangle the mess, which can take months or even years. But perhaps the most chilling detail is how many victims don't even realize they've been scammed until weeks later, because the changes to their Social Security accounts might not affect their next payment immediately, and by the time the missing deposit alerts them, the scammers have already moved the stolen funds through multiple accounts, often overseas, making recovery virtually impossible. And yet, despite how advanced these schemes are, there are still clear warning signs. Calls or messages that demand immediate action, threats of benefit suspension, requests for personal or banking information, and payment requests in forms like gift cards or cryptocurrency should be instant red flags. But scammers are experts at pushing victims past the point of rational thought by using high-pressure tactics like, "I'm required to keep you on the line until this is resolved," or "This is your final warning before legal action begins." And those lines are designed to cut off the idea of hanging up and thinking it over, because hesitation is their enemy. And in one particularly disturbing trend, scammers have begun targeting victims' relatives, calling adult children pretending to be from the SSA, warning them that their elderly parents' benefits have been compromised and that they need the child's help to verify information, which not only exposes the younger family members, but also makes it harder for the real SSA to sort out the mess, because now multiple identities are involved. And the financial toll of these scams is staggering. According to the Federal Trade Commission, seniors lose hundreds of millions of dollars each year to Social Security-related fraud, but experts believe the real number is far higher because so many cases go unreported out of embarrassment or fear of losing independence, and scammers know this, which is why they deliberately target older individuals, confident that most won't go to the police. And the emotional damage is just as severe. Victims often feel violated, anxious, and mistrustful of legitimate institutions afterward, and in some cases, they withdraw from social contact entirely out of fear that anyone they speak to could be trying to scam them, which is exactly the kind of isolation scammers rely on to keep their operations thriving. And the sad truth is, technology is making these scams harder to stop. Caller ID spoofing is so sophisticated that even law enforcement struggles to trace the origin of calls, and scammers can now use AI-generated voices to impersonate real SSA employees, matching their tone and mannerisms from public recordings, which means the voice on the other end of the line could sound exactly like a real person you've spoken to before, but it's actually a computer reading a scammer's script, and this blending of real and fake makes it almost impossible for the average person to tell the difference. And in one recent case, a scammer used AI voice cloning to imitate the voice of a victim's late husband during a supposed SSA call, claiming he had been authorized from heaven to warn her about a benefits suspension. Twisted, manipulative, and devastating, but effective enough that the woman followed instructions to wire $9,000 before a neighbor intervened. And the real danger here is that, as these scams evolve, the line between believable and unbelievable gets thinner, and unless seniors and their families actively educate themselves about the latest tactics, more and more people will fall victim. And that's why the most powerful weapon we have isn't law enforcement or technology. It's awareness, because every scam call that ends with a hang-up instead of a stolen bank account is a small victory against this multi-billion-dollar criminal industry. And spreading that awareness, talking openly, sharing stories, and refusing to let embarrassment silence the conversation is the only way to take the power back from these thieves who specialize in turning trust into profit. Favorite charity, or even what kind of phone you use, they'll remember it and bring it up later to make the interaction feel personal, because they know familiarity is one of the most powerful psychological tools for lowering your guard. And they pair this with carefully scripted urgency, saying things like, "I'm so glad I reached you today, because if I hadn't, your benefits could have been suspended." And once fear and familiarity combine, it's almost a perfect trap. And while phone calls are still the main weapon, there's a growing wave of email-based Social Security scams that use official-looking PDFs and embedded links to lead victims to fake SSA websites, and these sites are so well designed that even tech-savvy users struggle to spot the difference, because they mimic not just the look but the functionality. Clicking on Contact Us opens a real SSA page. The address in the browser might even contain ssa.gov in part of it, and the security padlock is there because the